Welcome back. You're watching Fiji Village Street Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight from International Union for Conservation of Nature, Oceania Regional Office, Alisi, Rabukawaqa, the Fiji Marine Project Officer, and Rahul Chand, the Protected and Conserved Areas Coordinator. Welcome to the show, Alisi and Rahul.
Thank you, Vijay.
International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, is an international organization working in the field of nature conservation and sustainable use of natural resources. It is involved in data gathering and analysis, research, field projects, advocacy, and education. Their mission is to influence, encourage, and assist societies like us throughout the world to conserve nature and to ensure that any use of natural resources is equitable and sustainable. So we'll start off with you, Alisi. IUCN Oceania office is based here. What are your main focus areas of operation for Fiji?
Thank you, Vijay. So, the IUCN office, we help governments achieve their priorities, their targets, their commitments. And I work within the Marine Program. And Fiji has made a commitment to protect 30% of our exclusive economic zone, our oceans, by 2030. And that is the primary focus of our work, helping Fiji to identify the best places to protect in our oceans while also considering the uses. And it's a very simple explanation, but there's a lot of work that's gone on behind the scenes, even for the past 10 years. Trying to identify the best places to protect.
30% of marine protected areas, Rahul, is that sustainable for Fiji? How is IUCN assessing that?
The 30% is a figure that we are working on, but it's always good to protect more. The reason is because we are a small island nation, but we have to see we are surrounded by oceans, and if we consider not only Fiji, the entire Pacific has got huge ocean space, and that is the identity of the people, the ocean. We depend on our proteins, our food source, our livelihoods are dependent on ocean. So as much as we can protect, it does not mean we completely have no take from the ocean. We can still use it in a sustainable way. That is the catch. The catch is the word sustainable practice. So 30% is a target that we are working towards, but we should try to make an effort to protect as much as possible, which means even if you are using the ocean for your food or for livelihoods, fishing or anything that you are doing with the ocean, we still use the idea of sustainable practices. That's what our objective is.
There's always the question about walking the talk, and there's been a lot of talk about conservation for many years now. Is it working, and where are we lacking?
Ooh, that is a big question. On the working part, I can talk about. For us within the Marine Program, one of the tools we use is marine spatial planning. It's where you get all of this information, this data, and there's like hundreds of different information, from the shape of the seabed floor to the temperature of the oceans, the changes in climate, the threats to the ocean like cyclones, earthquakes, all of this different information, as well as the use of the space, transportation, maritime, and we lay all of this information up to find out what our ocean space looks like, and then figure out if we want to continue, sustainable practice with livelihoods, with the use of the space, for economic development, but also ensuring protection. This is the plan. This is the design we can use. We protect this space. We use this way, and so that has been our goal, to help advise our government on these are the best ways that we can do this work. If I can take it down a level, in the province of Laos, we work there with one of our partners, Conservation International and the Laos Seascape Initiatives, a whole consortium of partners, to help the Laos Seascape at that level, district level, community level, also do their own planning and mapping. And so when we talk about how we're planning and working to map it, it's not just at this big level, at national scale, we're also looking at how we're helping communities identify places to protect based on their knowledge, and their experience and they tell them, okay, this is what all this data and information is saying, and then the community comes, well, this is how we see it working, and then you help them to figure out the best way it works. And I don't think I would be the best person. I might be biased to say, oh, I think it's working, but I can say that I think we've given it our best shot in always helping to advise communities.
Ocean temperatures getting warmer by the day, assessments continue to be made on it and how it affects us. Are we walking the talk, and how much more can be done, Rahul?
Thanks, Vijay. I think I just want to pick up from what Alisi was talking about conservation, and then I'll link up to the question you asked. Conservation, and when we plan these different ideas of how we can protect our natural environment, I think if it's not working, we have to find the solutions within us rather than trying to see that what would be the solution. When you talk about the temperatures rising, why is it happening? It is not happening because naturally the temperatures would rise, but the rate at which the temperatures are rising has been accelerated. It has been increased at a level that is not sustainable. So that is because of the human influences. So who's going to do these things to stop or to at least slow down the rate of increase? It is us. So if it's not working, we have to find the solutions within ourselves. So we have the government, we have the communities, we have the non-governmental organizations, we have the religious organizations, we have the charity and faith-based organizations. All these organizations have to work together to make sure that what we have done to our beautiful earth has to stop at some point. Otherwise, there will be a day when our villages which are on the coastal are underwater, or there will be no food sources, whether it's from the sea or on the land, because we have basically started wiping out the other species which are our food source, plant or animals. So it may not be working, but we have to make an effort to work. There is no other plan that we have on the table that we can work about or talk about rather.
Alisi, you work with communities in Fiji, being the Fiji Marine Project Officer. How much focus has there been in Fiji and on the area of protection of our ocean and marine life? And are we doing enough?
You know, I feel like I really need to give a shout out to all the conservation partners on all the incredible work that's been done around the country. We have 4 what we call seascapes in Fiji. The Vatira Passage, that's between Vitilevu and Bonolevu. You have the Great Sea Reef that runs from Madhuata coming down to the Assawas. You have the Great Kandavu Astrolabe, as well as the Laos Seascape. And we have all of these different partners that work in these ecosystems, in these seascapes, with communities to try and find ways to help them. I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question again?
Are we doing enough in conservation?
And there is a lot of work that has been done, but I think there's always more that we can do. Because one part of it, like I was explaining our work, when we do marine spatial planning, it's a design, and a lot of this you go into communities and you help design processes, you help design the best way to do something. And then the next part is implementation. And when it comes to implementation, it comes with political will, even at community level, as well as the financial mechanisms to help to implement this kind of projects. And so we have been doing much so far, so much, but there's also more that can be done, especially with the great plans and initiatives that have been put in place at different levels in communities all around Fiji. You go there, they have their committees they're called the Umbula committees, or natural resource management committees, in village level, district level, all these different levels, and not just within indigenous communities, it's everyone within.
Give an example. What kind of work do they do? What type of action do they take on the ground?
Let me try and give an example from a place that I've actually worked. Prior to being in IUCN, I used to work with another organization. We had a project site based in Autec Oneata in Laos. And so On the island of Oceania, they had tried several times to implement marine protected areas or tambu area. So they put one on a reef, and then they realized it was too far. They couldn't monitor it, no one could come, but they could hear the boats going in and out every day, fishing day and night. And so they moved it to another area, but it still was difficult. Finally, they moved it to a place that was just within their line of vision. Everyone knew where it was. And so part of the work of this committee of those who helped to set it up was then they were transplanting species of giant clams to bring it in there to try and revive it again. They were trying to do projects around oyster farming and a lot of work around ocean work. It's also land-based. Like people forget that everything in the sea starts from land. And so also like looking at their waste and where everything's going, ensuring protection. And another interesting, like just tangent, just talking about it, one of the things that came up was that the communities, the women, they rely on fisheries. They go out and fish every day, especially in these outer areas. And they fish and they come back and they cook lunches, meals for kids at school. And so when we were having discussions about the fisheries and the pressures on it from fishing daily, one of the things that came up was maybe if we had like a chicken coop and then they had eggs, it would be an alternative source of protein so they don't put pressure on the fish all the time. And so there are like these simple solutions that they can look at, and it also alleviates the pressure of time and energy having to go out and fish daily when on maybe 2 days a week you can instead go to the farm and get the eggs and use that to make lunches instead. And so those were the ways that they were trying to think up ways to work. And then other bigger solutions like Laos is so far away, getting a solar freezer so that they could freeze fish and then bring it to the mainland to sell for livelihoods as well. So those are the kind of activities that they would try and help in their communities.
Rahul, from IUCN's perspective on how much focus is Fiji giving on protection of our ocean and marine life, and if we're doing enough?
I'm very, I was in the region before as well. Before I joined IUCN as well, I was working for SPREP, and I've seen that Fiji is a leader in conservation work. There's no denial of that. And one thing that is an advantage for the country is that we have a huge presence of the non-governmental organizations that take lead on these conservation programs. So the way I see it, I think we are really doing well in terms of conservation work, in terms of protecting our oceans. Look at Fiji government's current moratorium on the DSM, the deep sea minerals mining, and all those issues which are much, much bigger before us, and the government taking proactive approaches to looking at that, and as well as the protection and the work on the climate change that we have done. So on many layers on climate change, on biodiversity loss, on ocean protection, all these, I think we are taking quite a lot of measures. So for me personally, I think we are doing really well, and I wish we should continue our efforts on those fields.
A lot of people always ask the question, because we have a lot of talk when COP conferences are held, or when there's World Ocean Day, which is coming up on June 8th, about what can be done all year round in terms of frequency of awareness campaigns for the greater good for everyone to understand, because there's a lack of knowledge that is getting quite evident amongst members of the community. What are your thoughts on that, Alisi?
No, I think Rahul had alluded to this earlier when we were talking about how we can make our ocean around us part of our everyday language, our everyday living. Most of us aren't really aware of, the local names of fish and crustaceans and shellfish, which ones are locally available around us. What seasons do you go and harvest them? What's the appropriate size to harvest them? And one of the things I think we could do is ask ourselves how we can make it part of our everyday living, learning the language and understanding it, because if you're speaking it every day, then you're living it, right? I feel like I talked about a similar thing when it came to, was it World Forest Day or something? And we were talking about the names of trees and plants. Like, if you walk outside and you don't know the names of the different plants and trees and fruits, you wouldn't really be connected. But if you were to learn and know the different names and their seasons and when they flower, then there would be a bit deeper connection to them and understanding when they come around. And so those are some of the ways we, as individuals can become more connected, because there's only so much you can do. You can only have so many parades, so many awareness sessions. Those are great, these big moments. But in our everyday living, I think that's when we as people need to take a step forward. We'd be like, okay, around Suva here in the harbor, what are the different kind of things that we find here? What are the fish? What are the shellfish that maybe used to be here because it's a bit depleted in our own villages or in our communities? And that's how I think we can, start to take that step of understanding and having that awareness part of us every day. And then you're just like messaging people, hey, do you know it's like the season for this? We should go out and have some. It's really good. And then it goes into, but how would you prepare it? Recipe, food. You gather people and then you're all together celebrating it in your own community amongst your friends. So that it becomes part of your everyday life. Because I think that's the way we can do more to care or have more awareness.
Vijay, if I may just quickly add on to that comment, because it's a very interesting point. When we talk about conservation, we are talking about managing, but we're not really managing the natural resources, we're managing people's activities. So that's why the challenge is quite big, because in its own way, environment doesn't really make much problem to the people, but it's the people who are causing problems to the environment. So we have to manage the people. When we talk about conferences, whether it's climate change, biodiversity, land degradation, all different COPs that we all participate, when we come back, what is our local level actions? We see our education system is so much into a silo system where we cannot look beyond what is around us. We are so controlled by the curriculum that is before us, and we learn only those in textbooks, and we don't see what's in our nature, as Alisi was saying. Apart from that, how much awareness do we create in terms of doing environmental audits in different organizations that we work for? Do we protect, do we conserve electricity? Do we save water? Do we save energy? And how much paper we use? All these green approaches that some years back the government was working on, the green growth framework. How much have we progressed towards that? How much is our business sustainable? So it's not only ordinary Fijians on the streets, but it's everyone's responsibility, whether it's the private sector, the public sector, the ordinary Fijians. Everyone has to play a role. So while some of them can go to the COPs and negotiate, for us, it's the responsibility of everyone to get together and make these things happen. Otherwise, it's only meetings and workshops.
An important issue that you two touched on was education, because the big question marks coming up about our curriculum and our textbooks, some still sitting from decades ago and not moving to present day, the mode of teaching, the way teaching occurs in our schools, and the expanded way of thinking, including climate change and other issues, plus traditional knowledge. That stories coming through that when people went to Vanuatu trying to get the scientific names of marine species, then the only ones knew were the ones who were uneducated, uneducated in the sense of the curriculum that we have, but really educated on traditional knowledge, the fisherwomen who knew every marine species and what their roles in the ecosystem. What can be done? Because this is the big push if you want a holistic change, Alisi.
Yeah. Well, that's very exciting. It's something we talk about often, like an overhaul of the curriculum, our education, and how we learn things. And Fiji's culture is just so rich, and I'm not just talking about indigenous, I'm talking about our local culture. Everyone who's come in, since the Gurmit, all of the other ethnic groups that have come in, because that has only enriched the knowledge, local knowledge that is present in this country. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of work to try and figure out how much of this do we want to include? And I think that, I mean, like, even just off the top of my head, thinking about how, health studies is not just about health of the human body, but health in terms of consumption. What are we eating? Food that is medicinal, and how that's taught together. Thinking about history, when we're learning about social science, we're often learning about countries from far away. What about the histories, the well-known histories that we have, as well as the histories locally of different places that is only known in those communities, gathering all of them together to be part of our education system as well, and encouraging, who knows, maybe when we do like these essay competitions, poetry competitions, all these different things, to really make it a part of it. I think an interesting, an interesting observation for me, looking at the Ratskun Day celebrations, they said it's only for, they said that they made it a week long. But just seeing all of, this richness of culture and practice that has come out of it, and how can we do more of that and amplify it, for everything around us. I don't know. It's a big conversation.
One of the things that we lack in communicating environmental messages is recognition and incentives. If we can incentivize people who take interest in teaching about our totems, about plants and animals that is around us, we can incentivize them. Okay, you have published a book, your book would be recognized, we give them a platform, then their work is recognized, it comes into the limelight, people talk about it, people learn about it. Even if we don't have it into the education system, we can still recognize that Professor Randy Thaman has done lots of work on plants and trees of life in Fiji. And those kind of documents and books needs to come to the light to know about our own plants and animals. In terms of incentivizing, whether it's conservation work, MPAs, if we provide them some support, there has to be some sort of recognition coming from those who are able to do this, so that people who are doing conservation, people who are teaching, educating people about awareness programs, see the benefit of doing that.
You're watching Fiji Village Street Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
Why are we playing outside?
Because my dad is thinking my home is going to be super cool.
No way!
Yeah, he makes me a new desk.
Whoa, then we can stay together.
He's also going to paint my walls.
Where did he get this tooth from?
Kasabiya, they have everything you need.
I wish my dad could do that.
Because your dad is not Kasabiya's dad.
Dad, go to Conserved!
Get ready for the biggest event of the year, Fiji Showcase 2023. Enjoy international entertainment, delicious food, thrilling rides, and most importantly, unbeatable deals on thousands of products. Get ready to shop, eat, and have fun at Fiji Showcase 2023. From June 30th to July 8th, Fiji Showcase 2023 is coming to the Vodafone Arena in Suva with 9 days of non-stop excitement you won't want to miss out. Mark your calendars and we'll see you there.
Welcome back. You're watching Fiji Village Street Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight from International Union for Conservation of Nature, Oceania Regional Office, Alisi Rabukawaqa, the Fiji Marine Project Officer, and Rahul Chand, the Protected and Conserved Areas Coordinator. Let's talk about overfishing, Rahul. Overfishing and giving fishing licenses to foreign vessels has been raised as a concern who follow this show closely. They are asking, why can't these be handled by local vessels? Is there a limit on the number of vessels? Because overfishing, according to our followers and listeners, is a major concern. And where is the drawback?
All governments, whether it's in Fiji or anywhere else in the world, they regulate fishing through their own fisheries law or legislations. So based on that legislation, they issue permits and licenses for people who want to fish. And I'm talking about those who come into your EEZ and beyond as well. So If they are fishing and they have the license, they have the permits, they are obligated to follow the country's legislation, the law. And for local fishermen as well, they have their own requirements that they must meet under the Fisheries Act, which is in Fiji, it is through the Ministry of Fisheries. Now, the question of overfishing simply is because people seem not to understand the repercussions of overfishing. If we overexploit resources, we will come towards depletion. Then is the issue of conservation. If we lose a species from environment, we lose it for good. We are not going to get it back. For example, when we talk about climate change, and I keep saying this comparison, when we talk about climate change, we say, what should we do? And the concern about climate change is so huge. You see, whenever there's talks about climate change, so many people run to it because they're really concerned about it. But the fun fact is, if you lose a species from environment, it becomes extinct, it is never going to come back. At least we can slow down the rate of climate change. I'm not saying climate change is not a threat, it is a big threat. But the threat of species extinction is much, much bigger. So when we talk about overfishing, people need to understand what we are really dealing with. The problem of overfishing puts pressure on the existing ecosystem. It affects people's livelihood, it affects people's source of revenue, food, and so many other issues. And this has a rippling effect to so many other problems as well. So obviously, this is a problem, but the problem is not just something that Ministry of Fisheries alone can tackle. People have to play their role, as we talked about earlier, the traditional leaders, people who are in communities, how we can work together as a team. And this is where an integrated approach. So it's not just that those who are fisheries stakeholders have a role to play, there are other people as well that must play this role. And of course, our enforcement has to be strengthened. There's never going to be enough of funds available to do enforcement, but we have to invite private sector, other sectors who can be involved with helping in enforcement, or at least assisting people to implement these policies and legislations we have around us to make sure that overfishing, which is really a big problem, can be reduced.
Alisi, your message on overfishing, on people concerned about it?
That's also one of the focus of my work in IUCN when we are spatially planning out places to protect, because fishing is one of the biggest industries, in Fiji, in our oceans. When you think about the uses of the space, fishing is one of the big uses. And for us, what we do is we identify what are the fishing hotspots, where people most likely to fish, how often have they been fishing there over a period of time, talking in decades, and then trying to design okay, if this is where they're normally fishing, but it's also a biodiversity hotspot or a place with a lot of different species that need to be protected, then we need to find a balance of continuing to allow economic activities, but then protecting all of these places. And that's at a national scale of what we're trying to do. And it's a difficult conversation to have because business is business. We have our fishing industry partners who are also part of the conversation, who share their concerns and say this is how business is run. It's not just about the vessels, it's also about when we go on land. We have our people that we employ, like the chain of production. If this is impacted, it impacts this chain of production. And so it becomes a question of how are we, and to use the term from climate change, having a just transition. If we're going to transition into this, we're ensuring that everyone who is impacted or is considered so that, they're not left out of pocket or something like that. And that's at a national scale of discussions of overfishing, and it involves a lot of that. There are permits that are given. There are limits to the number of fishing vessels that come in from foreign fishing vessels. But at the same time, as Rahul has also mentioned, monitoring is costly, and enforcement to go out there and look at our entire ocean to ensure that we only have the vessels that are supposed to be in our waters fishing, and chasing everyone else out, making sure they're fishing the quota that they're supposed to be fishing. There's a lot of different layers to it. But from what I understand, from what Fisheries has shared with us, they've done a lot of good work. But again, there's a lot more that can be done, which is where we come in help with understanding all these different designs, other ways we can do this work, all the other partners that come in to need to be a part of it. But again, that's still at this national level. I think at the local level, there's also issues of over-harvesting. Not just the fish, you think of the traditional fin fish, like shellfish, beach dimmer. There are all of these different things that we find that have a role to play in our ocean. And if you take away too many of them, it upsets the balance in our ocean. And once that's upset, once it goes away, we can't get it back. In some places we might be able to, but in most places we won't. And that's why we continue to do work or advocate on having these protected areas, because if you have these little pockets of areas that are protected, that are untouchable, maybe in some places, the species that are present there, if it's lost in other places, at least it's still there, and it can eventually hopefully repopulate these other areas. So we still have that diversity. So that's how we're working on this issue of overfishing.
Is there data coming out in relation to overfishing? Is there work underway, organizations or global agencies looking in different areas?
Yes, there is data available, but not with us. I think it should be one of the regional organizations for different countries. I assume it would be Foreign Fisheries Agency probably would have some data. And of course, the national data would sit with the Ministry of Fisheries in terms of how much permits and licenses they've issued and how much was harvested, and also the quota system that Alisi mentioned too. So we should have an indication of how much we were to catch and how much was actually harvested from the ocean. But there is a strong likelihood that over-harvesting is a big concern in most countries.
What are the data indicators, Alisi?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say not just over-harvesting, but also bycatch. Like, you're going out to fish something, you put out your nets, but you catch so many other different species of fish, even turtles, dolphins, and then you just take them. If they kill, you throw them back in the water, and that's also a huge loss as well. I couldn't give any figures off the top of my head, but I know that there are a few reports that have come out recently looking at issues on bycatch. I think there was a report recently on sea turtles, on the populations of sea turtles globally, and these are all related to overfisheries or the fishing industry globally, because that's the other thing we have to remember. Everything is all connected. I like to talk about turtles because they're migratory, like whales. They go around the world. And so if we're here in Fiji and this is a nesting site, maybe somewhere in Wamaiviti or Lao, these turtles come in, they lay their eggs, they go off again, they come in. But eventually they don't turn up. Some might say, oh, they're killing all the turtles, but that might not be the case. It's because they're migrating all around the world. So there might be places around the world that there are issues happening. And so a lot of these issues, there are local things we can do to help ourselves, but a lot of them have to be managed globally.
Issue about turtles, you see people raise questions about whether we still have a ban on turtles, or how is Fiji handling that situation. Where are we at the moment with the protection of our turtles?
Well, I think there's a permitting system for catching of turtles, with whatever news was made recently and all those things, which was done within the permitting system. But as far as my knowledge is concerned on turtles, I think it's something that is endangered, and it's in great danger of we are going to lose out if we don't protect them. So it's the responsibility on people. I think the question before us is, let us talk about an event or anything for that matter. If there's something happening, how do we communicate this to the masses? If something is compulsory, we want to bring in turtle, that's great, it's your tradition or anything for that matter, and you get the permit and all those things, it's good. But are we able to do the same thing without using the turtles, can that tradition still be alive? So without affecting someone's customs and traditions and all those things, can we still communicate to the masses that, look, this is our tradition, this is our customs, but for the sake of environment and protection of these species, let's get away with these for now and let's move on with something, I think that is a bigger message rather than just focusing on turtles alone. It's for anything for that matter. We can spare our traditions and customs for a bit just to protect in the larger interest of mankind. And I would probably ask Alisi to speak more about that because she's involved with communities on protection.
Yeah, I think it comes back to, that's another interesting thing about traditional practices, local practices. Again, it comes back to when you look at the threats to these species from, commercial fisheries, from being bycatch, caught on nets that were meant to catch something else, versus local practices. And this is around the world. There are all these local practices where, they harvest species of animals that are now endangered. And then you have to go and ask the question, how did they become endangered in the first place? It wasn't because of these practices, because this was done one-off every now and then. Whereas when you look at fishing industries, it's happening every day. They're out there in the water, fishing, extracting. And so we have to look at those perspectives too, because it's good that we can, like Rahul mentioned, let's see which part of our practices can evolve, but also there are practices that we engage in, locally that can teach other industries how to be more sustainable. So there's one way to look at it, okay, maybe we can evolve, or maybe we can expand on the good practices that we do have, and we welcome one to say, we should do things in a way that is inclusive. Because if we're going into a conversation of indigenous practices, a lot of indigenous communities, a lot of local communities have this almost familial connection with their environment. And it's not transactional, or it's not extractive, like I'm going to take this to sell money. It's like a whole connection from the physical to the spiritual and everything else that comes around. And then it's completed there and then. But it's always an interesting discussion every time it comes up. I feel like I shot myself in the foot using turtles as an example of migratory species. But turtles have been endangered. There have been a lot of work globally to help with their protection, as well as quotas and bans in Fiji. And I think that's a good way to balance out all of these different practices, because we have all these different people and practices that live in our country, and we have to acknowledge and find a way for everyone to work together.
Just on overfishing, we've touched on that, and we're looking at marine species, and we talked about bycatch, which is very interesting too, the extended threat that comes with fishing. Should Fijians be worried? Should they be concerned at the level that overharvesting or fishing is taking place?
I think so, absolutely. They should be. In fact, they should be very alarmed. One thing that I do not have much expertise on the illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, which happens, which is to a huge extent, which goes unreported, it's not regulated, and it's illegal fishing. These are much bigger problem than just overfishing or even bycatch, of course, that you've mentioned, which is a good example. But every Fijian should be worried about these issues, because this is putting a huge pressure on the resources that we have. And if we continue to have this unregulated, illegal fishing, as well as unsustainable fishing methods and bycatches and all these things, then there will be a time then when you go to the ocean, you don't see fish at all. Because people were just not bothered. So it becomes everyone's business, whether you are a student, you are a politician, you are a scientist from a science background, any field. it is your duty to understand this concern and help make our fisheries sector more sustainable, because otherwise in years to come there we will have nothing left in the ocean. And mind you also, Vijay, our tourism industry is thriving on some of these resources that we have, that we show to the world. I know, imagine we don't have good corals, we don't have good fisheries, we don't have marine protected areas, and there's no thriving ocean resources. What will people come to see here? When we go to other big countries where they have more land, and we go to deserts and safari and all those things, what do we show? We show our marine life. And if we don't have that, then this industry, which is probably the biggest now in Fiji, will just go a nosedive. So we have to think about it. It's about our future, our livelihood.
Alisi?
Yeah, it's not just the ocean on itself, like there are so many other sectors or industries that rely on the ocean as well. You mentioned tourism, and that's like a big part of livelihoods as well. People go out there for all these different things, and I think it's important for us to understand that the ocean is just not there for fish disconnected from everything else. We are all connected, and also thinking about all of the other industries that impact the ocean: agriculture, forestry, waste management. All of these things, all rivers lead to the ocean, and if you're having activities that reach the rivers, it's going to go to our ocean. So we all have a role to play. Even if you're from the highlands and you don't see the ocean, what you're doing up there also impacts on the ocean, and vice versa.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
Why are we playing outside?
Because my dad is thinking my home is gonna be super cool.
No way!
Yeah, he makes me a new desk.
Whoa, then we can stay together.
He's also gonna paint my walls.
Where did he get this tooth from?
Kasabi is there for everything you need.
I wish my dad could do that.
Because your dad is not Kasabi's dad.
Dad, go to Conserved!
Get ready for the biggest event of the year, Fiji Showcase 2023. Enjoy international entertainment, delicious food, thrilling rides, and most importantly, unbeatable deals on thousands of products. Get ready to shop, eat, and have fun at Fiji Showcase 2023. From June 30th to July 8th, Fiji Showcase 2023 is coming to the Vodafone Arena in Suva with 9 days of non-stop excitement you won't want to miss out. Mark your calendars and we'll see you there.
Welcome back. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan, and we're talking about our ocean and how we as a community, we as the people of Fiji are faring in terms of looking after our environment, looking after our ocean, looking after our marine species. Alisi, what is your assessment on development without proper planning? Has this happened in Fiji? We've seen signs where it hasn't happened all the time, and we just talked about whatever we do on the land affects the ocean. Yeah. If you can have a wider look at, based on your work that you do in the community.
Yeah, well, I can start off from my work that we do with at the marine program. One of the important things that we look at, that we consider when you're designing protection, is looking at activities, all of the different types of activities that would happen that impact the ocean space. I mentioned agriculture, waste, runoff, even where we set up our dumping grounds, fishing, all of these different things, because all activities from land, they lead to the ocean. And sorry, Vijay, can you just repeat your question again?
Assessment and development without proper planning.
Yeah, and so the interesting thing is that even with development that has gone through the proper processes, it still has an impact on the environment. You can give a permit to remove mangroves for some kind of development. That does have an impact. And so I think that's the first thing that we need to think about when it comes to development, that it will have an impact on the environment, proper or improper planning. And then when it comes to improper development, the key thing there is because it's unexpected, and so you have not put plans in place to mitigate, because all development is going to impact the environment. The only thing that's changing there is that you're putting mitigation measures in place. This is going to happen, this is what we'll do to mitigate. We're going to cut down all these trees, we'll have to make sure that we reforest. We're going to do this activity here, we have to make sure we do, And so the issue with improper development is that you're not putting mitigation measures in place. And that's one of the ways that, we have to think about planning. Development is coming, it will happen, and it will have a negative effect on the environment. The part that we have to consider is what are the measures we're putting in place so that we can buffer those impacts so it doesn't completely decimate our environment.
Rahul?
Well, if it's an improper development, it should not go ahead in the first place. So we should have all necessary legislations and policies to make sure that any development that is coming goes through a proper process, rather than we do a band-aid solution halfway through when the development has kicked off. Infrastructure is already there halfway through, and then we say, oh no, this was not followed. So we have to first look within ourselves and see whether we have got all necessary policies to support development. That means, and I have seen that a lot of cases where when we see development projects coming up, people start criticizing it, saying it is going to affect environment. Not all developments will take away everything that you have. Sometimes it gives you more benefit. For example, a big hospital, a big construction is happening. It may have a huge impact on the environment, but look at the cost benefit analysis of the project. Then the issue is the mitigation, which Alisi was talking about. What are we mitigating? Is that mitigating worth to do or not? If you're removing huge amounts of trees and then you are building up a resort, and then you think that that resort is going to fetch you a lot of money. But the thing is, if you change water channel, if you change the system, the natural system of an environment, don't expect that the water flow and that the surrounding environment would be clean and pristine, because if you change the natural system, it is going to come back and make a huge impact on the coastal erosion, and all those things. So is the project worth to do it? If it's not, no matter how much it costs, you have to say no. Some hard decisions need to come in. But if a project is worth to do it, say for example, if you're building something in a place where there's very little people living, people are not too much directly dependent on the resources, it's worth to do it. So development is not always bad, but it's the issue about how we are mitigating and what sort of impact it has on the community. The question, the center point is always the people. How it is going to affect the people, their livelihood, their income and their source of survival. If it's affecting them directly, we have to be careful with such a development.
Is getting money through developments resulting in our environment being compromised?
I would have to give probably a personal example of this. We have a youth network from our province, more urban youth, and that was one of the things that came up many years ago when bauxite mining happened. It wasn't just money, there was also the issues of the consultation process, the communities not really understanding what they were getting into. But that is, yes, a big part of it. When you come with suitcases of big checks and you tell them, okay, give us this area, we'll pay you this much. Communities also want access to money because they want development, they want better lifestyles, and that's always the other thing too. And so for, this is a personal example that I'm going with here. With our network, that was one of the things that we saw, and we realized we really need to help in this development process, one of the things we're championing was free, prior, informed consent. This process of consultation where, you have all the information prior to saying yes. You're free from coercion, bribery and all these things. You have all the information you need, and the consent can be given and taken back at any point where you feel that they have not contained the agreements that you had at the beginning. Yeah? But that was 2014, 2016 when those things were happening, and there's been a lot of lessons learned. But it's still very prevalent that happens in communities where money comes in and is a big factor in the conversation around let us lease your land or let us buy your land so that we can develop it and we'll give you money.
I think, Vijay, this question is a very interesting one, because if I look at it from my own personal opinion, I think the answer can be in two layers. Number one is that if you look at other countries in the world that are well developed, maybe communities might not go for money but go for the environment. The question is, it's not fair on the community to say that please don't opt for money, opt for conservation, because have we given them enough opportunity? Are we above the poverty line? Are the communities well taken care of? Are there enough opportunities for them? Is their source of livelihood, revenue, income, good source of food?
Are they accessing basic human rights?
If these things are missing and then you expect them to say no to such developments over money, I think it's unfair. So we have to give them all the opportunities that they have and then ask them to do a fair judgment on whether they want to maintain the clean, pristine environment or they will choose money. I think most communities will choose their environment because they are, they have a sense of belonging to their natural environment. Mm-hmm. But with these basic things missing, it's an unfair question to ask to the communities.
What type of work is being done to ensure that we do not continue to destroy our mangroves in different parts of the country? That has come through. We had Blue Prosperity Fiji here. They just saying that it's almost like indiscriminate the way our mangroves are just being wiped out, and question marks are coming up. There's more areas that are getting flooded that people had never seen get flooded, and major concern continuing to rise even in parts of Suva.
Yeah. I think again that's also a layered question. I mean, in terms of work being done nationally, I think a few months ago, maybe late last year, I know that the Ministry of Environment hosted a meeting to look at the Mangrove Management Act. So that's in development, trying to put these legislations in place. And then when it comes to community, it was something Rahul had given as an example earlier, is also that other development, can also cause flooding, because when you change water channels, when you block areas where water is coming out. And then the issue of the mangroves themselves, it's very interesting. If I go back to our work, the way that we plan it out, we had talked a lot about the ocean, but coming closer to shore, we also look at coral reefs that you can protect, seagrass beds, and then coming right up to mangroves because they are all connected. And there is a lot of destruction that's happening, and mangroves need to be protected. It's in the life cycle of some marine species. They spend it within mangrove ecosystems. There are all of these different species that live there that need to be protected. It's a source of food. And if they continue to be cut down, like I said, the land and the sea is connected. If this is removed, it's an entire chain from land coming to sea all the way out into the ocean. And that removal also affects our fisheries, also affects the different species that are present there. And so there is removal that's happening, and we really need to also mitigate. Because the removal from development is not the only thing happening. We also have natural disasters happening, cyclones that have swept through and destroyed, acres of mangroves as well. So we're not the only ones doing this. Mother Nature too is moving across, and we have to be careful with how we're planning.
Rahul?
I think if I'm asked to say what would be a response would be on mangrove consumption, I would complete ban on using mangroves for firewood or for any basic uses, except for maybe reclamation only when it's approved as per the national policy or procedure legislation. And in not everywhere, there's some necessity is there that we need to small pieces of land and it's out of the main area and something like that. Then of course maybe we can consider, but that is a circumstantial case. But otherwise we should avoid as much as possible using of mangroves. We are on a serious risk of losing mangrove land, and also mangroves tend not to grow easily. So if we lose them and we want to replant them or do all these programs, those people who have done replanting of mangroves, we probably get the data to see how much have survived. So you can plant many mangrove plant seedlings, and out of that how many survive. So it's very difficult to get them back if we lose them from nature. So we must make our maximum effort to protect mangroves.
And you can't just plant mangroves
Yeah.
on any shorefront.
That's right too.
They have specific areas where they would best survive. So, you have to do all this research. So you can't just say, oh, we have our coast here, we want to plant mangroves. There are only specific areas that would be best for them.
Alisi, there are serious concerns that environment impact assessments are not being done effectively for some projects, and this is getting very concerning and worrying. This is the feedback coming from the people. Can you explain the process and what can be done better, and about public participation, how important environment impact assessments are before changes are done or plans are implemented?
EIA is always a big topic, again, going back to the example I'd given previously about the bauxite mining in Boa, when we were part of it, a lot of these, in terms of process, I think you need to already be aware, which is an unfair burden on people who want to be part of the process. Like, you already need to be aware, there might be something happening there. And then I think only an advert comes in the paper, and then you have to scramble to try and find a way to be there to participate at the time. And so it has not always been accessible for us as a youth group in the work that we do. We found that the process is not always friendly for communities, for people who would like to raise their concerns. And so it becomes a harder fight. And I think the other side too you have to consider is the burdens or pressures on our ministries as well in their work. And I'm saying this because I'm well aware of both sides, so you can't really be like, oh yeah, they should do more, but on the other side, they're trying to do their best, but there's just limited resources. I really think that in terms of the process itself, there has to be a way where it's more accessible, where people are more aware that consultations are coming up. And I'm just talking process here. You have to be clear about, okay, we came in to do the consultations here. We gave all of our input. You're going to take it back as the consultant or whoever. What comes out of it, we need to know again. It has to come back to us. It all has to be clear, because none of that is clear. And that's what aggravates people, because they don't know. They come into a hall, they sit for a meeting, they share all their concerns, and then they go away and they don't hear back. And that to them is disrespectful, come back and tell us what's come out of it. And if that process at least is clear and it's done properly with communities, at least that would alleviate one of the issues in the EIA thing.
I use the acronym CAT, C-A-T, to always remember what are the three main things that we should have in the EIA. The first is the, I forgot. But anyways, it's about the accountability, it's about the transparency, and it's also about the accessibility. So accessibility of not just the information that is about the project that is coming up, but it's also about public being able to access this information about the project that is being proposed and what is the, all those things. not only before the project, but during the process of development and through the government sources as well. So, for example, if government is giving a go-ahead for a project, then people should be able to access this information. Accountability, the people, so due diligence check. So if the community is not going to do the due diligence check for a proposed development, it is someone who is going to give an approval to check what is the standard, or what is the, what should I say, the background of this company or an organization that is proposing a development in another country, another joint venture, what happened in their previous projects, how they are well versed in terms of the environmental safeguards, are they taking any measures in their other projects or not. Those due diligence checks must be done, and that accountability should be there. So I think these few things, accessibility, accountability, transparency, the whole process has to be very transparent. What is the role of media in this whole EIA process? How can they make sure that public is able to access the information, the government is able to give this information to the community, and the decision is made through a well-informed decision-making process? So I think then only the EIA will work.
June 8th is World Ocean Day. IUCN has been working for years to ensure, as every year goes by, that there's more knowledge, mindsets change for the better, positive messages go through, and we see an effective process going through. As we wrap up, Alisi, what's your message to the people out there, knowing that the audience is interested in what they can do based on our conversations we've had, and how they can get involved even more?
I think I would like to encourage people to seek out information, seek out knowledge, especially on the things they want to know. Thank you, Vijay, for having this session on Straight Talk. It really opens up the topic for them to then find out all the different things that they can do. Even for World Oceans Day, we're actually making it a week-long celebration. We have a whole list of partners that we're working with: the Forum Secretariat, PCC, USB, International Secondary School. We're all coming together for the whole week from like the 5th to the 9th. We're having all of these activities around Suva. And if people want to know more or find out how they can participate, they can come on the IUCN Oceania website, our social media accounts, to look at all the different things that are happening. And it's exciting. Like, we're having our vigils and prayers. They're like, I think there's going to be tours maybe on the Utanialo. There's supposed to be a march on Thursday on World Oceans Day going to Albert Park. And there will be all these partners there with their booths, with all the information to share with people who are interested or want to learn more. And I'm talking students, those in university, or even those who are like just interested to know who are the different partners and organizations doing work in this space. Should come on down as well to come. That could be like a starting point for them who are interested to learn more, and then continue conversations with the people who would be the best ones to help them with whatever issues they have.
Rahul?
Yes, thanks, Vijay. I also like to echo what Alisi just said. We'd like to thank you for giving us this opportunity to share this information about World Oceans Day. And my personal message to all our fellow Fijians is that please avoid using plastics. It is the worst thing to use, which is having a huge catastrophic impact on the marine flora and fauna. And let us avoid, and especially because I come from a Hindu faith, and I want to say all Hindus should completely stop using any plastic products in their religious events. Completely, because most Hindus, what they do is after their rituals and their religious event is over, they go and put that into the sea, which is usually in plastic bags made of plastic products, and these are all end up into our ocean. Let us completely eliminate plastics from our lives as much as possible. If not, for some good purpose we're using it, for example in medical gloves, and that's okay, but as much as possible, let's get rid of plastics. And that, I think that's the message for World Oceans Day this year, that let's move towards getting rid of plastics.
Thank you, Rahul, and thank you, Alisi. That's our show for tonight. Until next week, have a great evening.
Thank you.
Get ready for the biggest event of the year, Fiji international entertainment, delicious food, thrilling rides, and most importantly, unbeatable deals on thousands of products. Get ready to shop, eat, and have fun at Fiji Showcase 2023. From June 30th to July 8th, Fiji Showcase 2023 is coming to the Vodafone Arena in Suva with 9 days of non-stop excitement you won't want to miss out. Mark your calendars and we'll see you there.